The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Attention Ditto Heads. Attention Bo Scouts.
Goes by the pseudonym Bo Snerdley.
It's time for the soul of excellence.
He is a radio host here in New York.
The Rush Hour is on the air.
Rush.
Now here's James Golden.
Of the incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Something funny happened this afternoon, my friends.
Whatever disagreements
Very funny.
we may have, we stand united in our commitment to uphold democracy, to protect all our people from harm, and to salute the courage of those who daily risk their lives in the service of our countries.
Including ICE agents.
Standing here today, it is hard not to feel the weight of history on my shoulder.
War history there, mate. That's right. Something very odd happened this afternoon. Very odd, indeed. Here you had the No Kings crowd on the left side of the chamber. That would be the Democrats, for those of you watching on television. So the No Kings crowd was on the left side of the chamber today when the King and Queen strode in. And wouldn't you know it, the No Kings crowd said bollocks to all that. They jumped up on their feet every time they could and decided to give little pecks of love to the backside of the King. All of a sudden, the No Kings crowd was all in favor of the King. They were respectful. They were listening with apt attention. And they were loving it, being in the presence of the King. Well, I said to myself, something's going on here. What is going on here? These people don't want a king. And yet, not only did he talk about his kingship, he went all the way back. He talked about his 5 times great-grandfather, mentioned Charles Dickens, and how Washington was a tale of 2 Georges, by George. And Democrats, the No Kings people, sat there with rapt attention. They were so quiet. They didn't shout out things like, "Oh, you're a liar," when he praised law enforcement for protecting the Commonwealth of peoples. They didn't jump on their feet and start talking about no ICE, no border patrol, no one respects these people. Now, they stood up and they applauded the King. Now, there is a picture, ladies and gentlemen, that is circulating from the White House. It is of King Charles standing next to Donald Trump. And the caption underneath it simply says, 2 kings. welcome to the Tuesday edition of Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour, fastest hour in American media. I must tell you, I loved the speech. A lot of it's pablum, but, and so I'm not talking about the content. Yeah, it was nice. It was all hunky-dory. We're best buds. We've always been best buds. We'll always be best buds. We're mates. We were mates even before you people decided you wanted independence from us. I thought it was a very interesting part, by the way, that he talked about no taxation without representation as the rift, making a point that at the time, British law was no taxation without representation. It was a very interesting speech from a historical standpoint. But the thing that I loved most about the speech continues to be something that doesn't have necessarily to do with the content, but the expression of the speech, in that I love hearing the English language spoken. And King Charles did a bang-up job with that. King Charles, yeah. Of course, we could go back in history, because another Charles, you may remember, those of you that study British history, King Charles Uno lost his head, so to speak, when the rebels over there didn't like him. Anyway, great speech. Congress was on their best behavior. They didn't boo the king. They didn't give him any cat calls or anything like that. We've got other stuff to talk about today, and we shall get to it. One of the best takedowns I ever heard, speaking of Congress, happened at a hearing featuring New York's purple-head Rosa DeLauro with another New York figure, Lee Zeldin. It was truly remarkable because what it exposed, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I know, Kimmel, FCC supposedly asking ABC for a review of 8 of their stations, so that has pushed probably a panic button. Yeah, they're going to review. They're saying it's over diversity, equity, DEI stuff, but they're going to review the ABC stations in light of Kimmel's horrific, ugly remarks the other night. Yeah, we got that. We have some indictments. Comey indicted again. Yes. Fauci's guy also indicted. Former advisor David Morin to Dr. Fauci indicted. So we have that. We still have some fallout from the White House Correspondents' Dinner the other night. We've got, as I like to pull up, quotes or clips, packages as they were, from news outlets around the country on various and sundry things. But the takedown, beautiful. Members of Congress who are charged with not only writing the laws but understanding the laws. Let's put on parade the jewel of ignorance that is one of New York State's delegation, senior most Congresswoman, Rosa DeLauro, she of the purple hair fame, with EPA head Lee Zeldin today.
When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper-Bright, Supreme Court case, familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are not, but let me ask you.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper-Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper-Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because...
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
Let me just...
You're a member of Congress. You should know.
Well, you're You have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
being very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year with regards to your question.
You are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment. Okay. Now, you just tell
me. You want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the question.
Well, I answered your question,
no, you
and you didn't like my answer because you don't know what Loper Bright is, because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is, because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny.
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law. I read the Supreme Court cases.
To this, and I would say
what you do for your constituents is actually read statute.
The budget is at real risk.
Read your Supreme Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh, you care about science? Now you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
because
science.
You don't know what Loper Bright is. Because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is. Your message to our folks at the EPA is that you want to defund us.
I don't have to listen to this BS.
BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up
I made up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Whoa is right.
Whoa.
What are you doing? Why are you helping looters?
Whoa. Damn it. Whoa. Stop embarrassing her. Yes, I mean, of course we have a member of... She doesn't know what the laws are. All she has is slogans. When climate change is flowing down on the streets and the climate change is flowing onto the streets and you people are cutting off, changing your policies, you're saying that it's a hoax, even though we told you first it was going to be a global ice age, and then we said, no, it's going to be global warming. And then after we got a few $1 trillion off of that, and it wasn't working no more, we said it's going to be climate change, so we could just say the climate's doing it. But, well, here is the law, ma'am. But, do you know it? Now, no, I don't know it, but I do now. I mean, give me a break. She's a congresswoman. She's one of the senior congresswomen. She doesn't understand the EPA statutes. She doesn't understand the Supreme Court. Now, James, do you understand? Nope, I don't. I never heard of damn Loper Bright until today. But I'm not in Congress writing the laws. And I don't read Supreme Court decisions either. I don't even read half the stuff that most have. I don't even read 99.99999% of the stuff that comes out of Congress because I don't understand it. I don't know whether any of you have ever tried to read the legislation that comes out of that place. I have tried. I give up on it because I'm not a warrior. And there are so many citations to back things, and the wording on it is so ridiculous. Unless you're a lawyer and you understand it. It's another language. But she is supposedly a legislator. This is her job. And she doesn't understand any of it. Doesn't know it. But yet, she knows all the slogans. And you want to define climate change. We spent trillions on climate change globally. We got fancy windmills that are killing whales and birds. We have solar power. And you know what all of that did after all of these trillions of dollars spent? It contributes 2% of the energy. It cannot do. And then when you talk to people about the electric car, especially if you talk to lefties, before Elon Musk got unpopular, they used to love their little Teslas. And then I remember talking with a young lady, environmentalist girl, and I said, how do you charge those things? How are you plugging in to the thing in your garage or the thing? Where does the power come from? It comes from a power plant that is fueled by fossil fuel. That's where it comes from. Where does electricity come from to power your green car. It comes from fossil fuel. The whole thing is a scam and has been a scam. And oh man, this was a beautiful takedown. We got to take a break.
Rush. This is the Rush Hour with James Golden.
Oh, Snerdley.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, known popularly as Bo Snerdley.
This is the Rush Hour with James Golden.
Rush. We're cooked as a country when my first reaction to hearing the news about Trump's attempt was, it was probably fake. Like, immediately I was like, oh, that wasn't real. Probably fake. And the second was, aw, they missed? So happy they missed. Oh. Yeah, that's sad. That's when you know we're cooked.
Well, she was cooked. The voice you heard belonged to an employee. Some people have her name out there. I'm not sure it is, so I'm not going to say it. This woman was apparently one of the managers, social media manager of United Healthcare. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you might remember, wasn't too long ago, that the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was assassinated. Lefties in this country celebrated it. This woman, young woman, worked for United Healthcare. So how do you think having the CEO of their company assassinated, how do you think that the management of United Healthcare reacted when they found out one of their directors of social media had posted that on TikTok? Well, I'll tell you. They didn't like it. Lily Bonnick's there. They didn't like it. And her career right now is deaded, at least at United Healthcare. Out the door. Stay there, folks. We have much more to go. James Golden, Bo Snerdley, Tuesday edition of Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. Fastest hour in American media.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, known popularly as Bo Snerdley.
This is the Rush Hour with James Golden.
Rush.
New tonight, a man is facing charges accused of raping and assaulting a stranger in Amityville. The Suffolk DA says the victim, who was intoxicated, collapsed after leaving the Esperanza Deli Cafe on March 27th. That is when prosecutors say the man you see there on your screen, Jose Ignacio Bonilla Garcia, dragged him behind a dumpster, raped him, punched him, and beat him with a large piece of wood. And prosecutors say it was captured on surveillance footage. The DA says the 32-year-old then fled to Texas, where he was caught.
Talk about the Amityville horror. He raped him. By the way, the alleged rapist is here in the country illegally. At least that's what's being the information that I have. James Golden and Bo Snerdley with you. Okay, let's get to some of the other things in the news. Okay, let us begin this segment stuff. Well, we already heard the Amityville horror. And that was horrible. Kind of a dude's worst. Well, okay. Okay, let's cut 3. Speaks for itself. This is the CNN version of it.
CNN, the Department of Justice has indicted former FBI Director James Comey for a second time. Kristen Holmes is live at the White House with more. Kristen, we should let our viewers know for context, he was previously indicted in September of last year on federal charges of making false statements and obstruction of justice related to his testimony. Those charges were later dropped, in part because the judge ruled that the interim U.S. attorney who brought them lacked authority to do so. But now we're learning that the administration has now sought charges against Comey again.
That's right, and that he was indicted a second time by the Justice Department. We do not know what these charges are. Just when it comes to what you were referring to, one of the things that we had heard from inside the White House, inside the Trump Justice Department, had been this idea that even though the judge said that he was throwing out the charges, that they could bring additional charges later because of the fact that it was all about that interim attorney, Lindsay Halligan. There was a belief inside of the Trump administration and inside the White House that they would be bringing charges again. And I can tell you from talking to people who are close to President Trump, this was somewhat of a priority for him. He wanted charges brought against James Comey. Obviously, the two of them have had an acrimonious relationship. He was the FBI director under President Trump.
Yeah, okay. So we have that from the indictment lab today. Also, let's now hit at, cut number 4. Another big indictment today.
Former top advisor to Dr. Anthony Fauci now facing criminal charges. This over an alleged cover-up involving research into the origins of COVID. Rich Edson on this story. Intriguing, Rich. What you find out there in Washington?
Now, it is, Bill. The Justice Department has charged David Morins, a doctor, with conspiracy, claiming he concealed federal records to counter evidence that COVID-19 may have leaked from a lab in China, all to help restore a controversial coronavirus grant. Morins, a former aide to Dr. Anthony Fauci, testified before the House's COVID Select Subcommittee nearly 2 years ago about emails he'd sent in February 2021, claiming that he'd learned to make emails disappear after he received Freedom of Information
Okay, this
Act
is getting in the weeds. I'm going to stop it right there. Folks, this is sadly not as huge as it should be. Many of us during the time of COVID, now COVID seems like ages ago memory, it's over, let's forget it. Folks, people were losing their jobs for trying to talk about the truth. We, the American people and people all over the world, were fed misinformation after misinformation after misinformation. When Donald Trump first started talking about China and COVID, everybody, the resounding from the left was, oh, shut up, he's making it up. I had at the time, and I mentioned to you, sources in intelligence that told me, intelligence community knew that this was a lab leak. Yet first we were told that COVID came from a wet market over near the Wuhan lab. A wet market. We were told all kind of crap. We're still being told all kind of things about the vaccines. We were told false information about what worked and what didn't work. Like hydroxychloroquine, like ivermectin for some people, because they're relatively cheap drugs. Instead, we got all this other stuff. Folks, this entire COVID pandemic is covered in misinformation and fraud from top to bottom. And when people try to talk about the origins of this, a lab leak. And by the way, NIH supposedly funded some of the COVID research that was then transported over to, it's like, okay, you people are all kooks. No, they weren't kooks. And I'm glad this indictment, there is so much that was wrong with COVID. So many tentacles of it that have yet to be held to account legally. So I'm glad to see that this one is moving forward. Cut 8. Another report from the news today that you should find interesting.
This coming in courtesy of Fox News, as we're learning federal authorities raided more than 20 locations, including child care facilities there in Minneapolis today. This is all a part of a sweeping fraud investigation into largely Somali-owned businesses This is all according to the Department of Justice speaking to Fox News. And we do have a quote there saying, quote, today the FBI with federal, state, and local law enforcement is involved in court-authorized law enforcement activity as part of an ongoing fraud investigation. We do know as of right now, authorities executed 22 federal search warrants in Minnesota today as part of this operation, which is not immigration related. So our photographer there is zooming out. But I do have this post that has just come in here. And it says HSI, in cooperation with its federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, engaged in court-authorized law enforcement operations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area.
The fraud is astounding. And I think one of the locations that they raided was the Laring Center. You know, the Laring Center, the one where they misspell learning. So we shall see the results of that. The fraud, folks, we're talking about multi-billion dollar. Yesterday we had a soundbite from Los Angeles talking about the audit that was taking place. Gavin Newsom knew about the hospice fraud. We're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of dollars out the door on fraud. In California's case, governor knew. They did nothing. Minnesota, again, Democrats knew. They did nothing. They let it go on. Well, James, that doesn't make sense. Why would they let it go on? Okay, ask yourself, Lily Bonnet there. Ask yourself a question. Ask yourself this. If you've got money flowing through your state, billions of dollars, and that money's coming from the federal government, and you've got a grifter population sucking up the money. Yeah, they're exporting some of it back home across the Atlantic, but a lot of it is circulating where? It's circulating within your state. And what does that do for the economic figures in your state? Why, it boosts them sky high. So you've got Gavin Newsom running around telling everybody, we've got the fourth largest economy in the entire freaking world. We'll do what we want. We're not going to send our illegal immigrants back home. We're not going to bother them. In fact, we're going to give them money. Plenty of money. Now, if you're an American businesswoman, businessman, you happen to be born in this country, maybe you're a person of color. Maybe you're not. You try to go get a damn loan to fund your business. Try it. Try the red tape. Try to start a business and with formation capital. The bank's not going to give it to you if you're just starting out. So you have all these supposed government programs, and when citizens of the country go to access them, you know what most often they're told? Screw you, go away. But yet you've got billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars flowing into the pockets of people who just arrived. And it's boosting up their economic numbers in their state, as well as, by the way, ensuring political patronage. Why? Democrats are giving me money. I'm not going to vote for those awful Republicans. They want to cut government programs. I won't get my money. And you remember what else we're told? We're told all the time. Remember the Democrats when they start talking about the SAVE Act and all this stuff? They're like, oh, illegal immigrants don't vote. Illegal immigrants not. You've heard that. Jackson, have you heard them say, just nod your head yes or no, have you heard them say that illegal immigrants don't vote? That there's no way that they don't vote? Have you ever heard them say that? Yeah, Carlos, have you ever heard Democrats say, what do you mean illegal immigrants vote? Illegal immigrants don't vote. They don't have a right to vote. Have you ever heard them say that? I've heard them say it a gazillion times, that illegal immigrants don't vote. They can't vote. They're not allowed to vote. I hear them say it. So let's turn to Alabama. Let's go down yonder. down to Alabama for our next little visit to local news stations. Cut number 13. This is some little joint. Most of you up north never would watch this in your life. It's called WAFF-TV. It's down there in the red state, in those deep, you know what they used to call, you know, when I talked about this with Princess Diana, they used to call Africa the dark continent. That's what liberals used to call Africa, the dark continent. Well, this is down there in the dark South. This is in the Southland. Democrats used to own the joint back in the time of George Wallace and all that. But this is what's happening at WAFF 48 in Alabama. This was what was happening.
3,000 registered voters in Alabama just got booted from the state voter rolls. That's after the Secretary of State, Wes Allen, ordered the removal of all non-citizens who were registered. But how did non-citizens get registered in the first place? WAFF 48's Nick Ballinger spoke to the Secretary of State to get to the bottom of this story. Nick?
Yeah, Margot, when I asked Secretary Allen how these people got registered to vote in the first place, he couldn't give me a clear answer just yet, saying it was still being investigated. But when he gave me a breakdown of how many there were in each county, the numbers were glaring. This is a list from Secretary of State Wes Allen of how many non-citizens were registered to vote in our counties. The state found 3,251 people. 742 of them were from North Alabama.
We got the information. We cross-checked it against our centralized data file here in the state of Alabama and found those 3,200 individuals.
The information he's talking about are people with alien registration numbers. Those are issued to immigrants who intend to live in this country permanently and have already applied for a green card. However, you're not eligible to vote with just an alien identification number. When I asked Allen how 3,000 plus were able to register in the first place, he couldn't give me the answer.
But it's our belief that only American citizens should be allowed to vote. Non-citizens, whether they're legal or illegal immigrants, cannot register to vote. It's a federal offense.
To vote here.
Well, they damn sure did it. Well, I don't understand it, boy. Wait a minute, boy. You telling me that non-citizens cannot vote. But then you're saying in the next breath, well, we got 3,000 of them on the rolls here. And we just kicked them off. But I thought you said non-citizens couldn't vote, boy. Well, yeah, we did say that, but apparently, come on now. Folks, you want to know why we need the SAVE Act in this country? Okay. One other thing before we head to the next break. My friends, Operation Fang Fang worked. Operation Fang Fang worked. We had in California 2 Republicans leading in what they call their jungle primary. Yes, my friends, the jungle primary sounds a little racist, but don't worry about it. The jungle primary, we all get all them dark. Remember, out in California, they didn't let them people of color participate in the debate, so they had to cancel the first one, and then News Nation took it over and said, okay, we'll let them in, and they had the peoples of color that actually debated. But in California, the liberals out at UCLA, they will run the first debate saying, hey, we don't want them peoples of color. We only want the white folks in this one. And the people of color out in California got mad. Said, this is unfair. So they canceled that debate, and then News Nation took it over, and they let the peoples of color in. But before all that happened, we had 2 Republicans in this Democrat stronghold that were in first and second place in their jungle primary. What jungle primary mean? It means that they don't care nothing about party. They just lock it up. Whoever gets the top 2 vote getters, that's who runs against each other. That was the way they were supposed to freeze out Republicans forever, because mostly Democrats out there. So we say we get the first 2. It won't be a Democrat and Republican. It'll be a Democrat versus Democrat. Now, what happened in the jungle this year is that you had a gazillion Democrats running, including some peoples of color that they didn't want in the debate. So they had to thin the herd. And how did they thin the herd? They got rid of Fang Fang. They got rid of Eric Swalwell, who was out boinking the Chinese spy years ago. They said, we got to get one of these guys that has numbers to get lost. Now, they had the dirt on the wall. Well, Princess Diana laid all this out beautifully on one of our Saturday programs, how they operated here, did this thing. They've been knowing about old Fang and Eck. They knew. So they sprung it. And Nancy Pelosi, by the way, was one of the ones that delivered the news, saying she's the closer. When Nancy say go, you go. Now, Hakeem Jeffries is their front man. They use him up front, but Nancy still run the show out there. Anyway, they got rid of... Yeah, I know we have to go to a break. Boy, I'm trying to hurry up. They said we got to get rid of Swalwell, Fang. So they let all the sex stuff out, and boy, they got rid of that boy in one weekend. Took him out. Here's the result. Republican Steve Hilton and Democrat Tom Steyer are the leading candidates now in the packed race to replace Gavin Newsom. Steyer got the numbers up with Swalwell gone, and now it's a Democrat versus Republican in a heavily Democrat state. Operation Fang worked. Blondie, third album, released on this day, 1979. We got to go to a break.
Rush. This is The Rush Hour with James Golden.
Bo Snerdley.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's The Rush Hour with James Golden.
Goes by the pseudonym Bo Snerdley.
Rush. Now, here's James Golden.
It is hard to believe that this was 1969. I'm telling you, it just blows me away. One of the greatest groups of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're still out playing. Different configurations in the group now. Chicago. Their debut album was released on this day in 1969. What a group. CTA was the first album, Chicago Transit Authority. They changed the name to Chicago by the time the second album rolled around. And that second album, I'm telling you, this group just, wow. Great musicians, incredible musicians, actually. Great songwriters and the rest. We got to go. May God bless, protect each and every single one of you, your family, your loved ones. Love and gratitude, my friends, for you being here with me, allowing me to be with you, God willing. We are back tomorrow for the Wednesday edition of Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. Until then, I bid you adieu. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. You can hear Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour weekdays at 4 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Born on America's darkest day of 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been helping America's heroes ever since. Heroes like FDNY Lieutenant Edward J. McDonough Jr., a Marine Corps veteran and lifelong public servant. After 9/11, McDonough served at Ground Zero. He later lost his life to a related cancer, leaving behind his wife Kimberly and their 5 children. Tunnel to Towers honored his sacrifice by paying off the family's mortgage. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org today.